Thank you for listening to the Luminous Recovery Yoga podcast, hosted by Kari. The views and opinions expressed here are strictly those of the person who gave them. Take what you like and leave the rest. These views and opinions do not represent any specific 12-step program, only my experience, strength, and hope in recovering from the dis-ease of addiction and codependency. If you'd like to learn more, please visit my website at www.luminousrecoveryyoga.com. Hello, my friend. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode of the Luminous Recovery Yoga podcast. This week, I have an extra special treat for you. I am interviewing the amazing Nikki Myers, who is the creator of Yoga of 12-Step Recovery, Y12SR. If you've been a listener of this podcast, you know that I talk about Yoga of 12-Step Recovery quite a bit. And in fact, this podcast is fashioned and themed after the Yoga of 12-Step Recovery meetings. Normally, in each episode, I do a short share based on a yoga and recovery topic. I share my experience, strength, and hope on that topic. And then if you continue listening, I provide a short yoga practice that is gentle and that helps to embody the theme, as I like to call it, embodied understanding. So it was a true honor to have an experience of sitting with Nikki, getting to interview her, and getting to just look at her, talk to her, and share this conversation with you. So I hope that you enjoy it. I hope you receive some nugget of wisdom. Nikki is incredible. I will be putting in the show notes and the description, depending on where you're watching this, some resources and places where you can find Nikki. And if you enjoy this interview, please feel free to share it with your friends. I hope you enjoy this opportunity listening to this conversation where I got to sit with Nikki Myers. And with that being said, here's the interview. All right. Welcome, Nikki. I am so excited for this interview. I am here with my precious, precious teacher, Nikki Myers. I am so thrilled that you said yes to having this conversation interview with me. And just to give a brief introduction of Nikki Myers is the creator, mastermind, pioneer behind Yoga and 12-Step Recovery, as we affectionately call it, Y12SR. And I personally discovered Y12SR years ago, but because of the just travel, and you live in Indiana, right, Nikki?
I do.
So your trainings were in Indiana a lot at the time. And I was like, I don't know when I'm in Portland, Oregon. I don't know when I'm going to find myself in Indiana. But then we had this COVID-19 pandemic, and like everyone else, you went virtual. Yeah. And because of that, I was able to take your training, which was revolutionary. And I want to get into that a little bit, but I also want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, mostly because I love the way you introduce yourself. So if you could introduce, I see even in your Zoom name, you've got she, her, we.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us, Nikki Myers, who are you, Nikki?
First, thank you. Right. It's my honor to be here with you. So I'm really grateful, and I'm grateful for the work that you're doing in spreading this, in supporting people in sustainable recovery, and all of those kinds of things. So first, thank you. So grateful, so deeply grateful. So I'm going to do it the way I always do.
Give it to us.
The way it is. So I'm Nikki, and my pronouns are she, her, and we. And in this little intro, it gives a little insight into what that we really is all about, right? So wherever I am, right? The running joke has always been, if I ever spoke at Harvard Medical School, I would do this the same way. Or, and the point is, no matter where I am, really, when I'm in this context, I do it the same way. And I'm Nikki, and I am an MBA. I'm a yoga therapist. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner, which is this trauma healing methodology and work that was developed by Dr. Peter Levine, right? I'm the founder of Y12SR, like you said, all of those things, and the big three-letter word is and. And I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a codependent. I'm the survivor of both childhood and adult sexual trauma. I'm a love addict. I'm a recovering debtor spender. I'm a former commercial sex worker. And I'm the mother of 2 living and 1 deceased child. I'm the grandmother of 5. I'm the great grandmother of 7, which every time that comes out of my mouth, I can't believe it. I'm the great grandmother of 7. Right. And right. I am a spiritual seeker. I'm a lover of all things dogs. I love dogs. Right. I'm really a lover of people and a lover of life. And all of those things are true. All of those things are true. And what part of my big part of my recovery journey has been in this reintegration of all these parts of myself. Right? That there are no bad parts, really. There are no bad parts. And so, and I had shunned some parts of myself, made them bad, awful, and wrong, and made other parts of myself, you know, the things that really get accolades and all that kind of stuff in the world. I made those right and wonderful and praiseworthy, all of that. And what happened was there was a war. There was a fissure in my being because all those experiences are there, right? And there was this war, there was this internal fight, there was this fissure in my being. And what I discovered was finding a way and doing the work in order to reintegrate all of those parts of myself. I, talk about this sometimes, like there was the Disney Pixar movie not too long ago called Inside Out.
Such a great movie.
And they were depicting kind of this, what I'm speaking of, and in Inside Out. The truth is there's a we inside of me. And that's what the we is all about. There's a we inside of me. So when I can, and we talk about this, 12-step is definitely very, very much. This is what I found it was the yoga 12-step recovery. And 12-step is very, very much a part of my healing journey. And I discovered when I do this integration work from 12 steps and from several other mechanisms, right? All those parts that we inside of me piece, I mean, that's ancient. That I think about that. There are 1,000 names for the Divine Mother, 1,000 names for and some of them are pretty fierce. And so, but they're all the Divine Mother. They're all the Divine Mother. So finding this way to do this work to reintegrate all these parts of myself has become very much a part of this healing journey. And what we talk about in 12 steps all the time, the founders of the 12-step program recognize, they talk about stinking thinking. Right. That really, a lot of this sits right between our 2 ears, right? It sits right between our 2 ears. And they talk about the committee, right? The committee.
The shitty committee.
Sometimes it's the itty bitty shitty committee, right? I love it. But the thought with this and those are all those fights. That's all that fight that goes on. What if we really can integrate those parts so that the committee is working in harmony, right? So that there's a harmony. Believe me, all of them have something to offer.
Absolutely.
All of them have something to give. What if we really can harmonize, right, that activity?
Yeah.
And then what we come to realize, right, is while all of these are a part of this experience, the truth is none of them define me. I'm much more than any of those. But until the fight stops, until there's harmony, I don't have the possibility to even begin to recognize that there's something so beyond this, right? All this stuff, there's something else, right? And so the idea, again, all of them define me. None of them are all of them inform this walk in the world, and none of them define me. None of them define me. So I love introducing myself that way. And the journey has been this way to find equanimity, this way to continue, I shouldn't say has been, continues to be, right? As long as I'm walking in this plane of existence, that for me is really the work, or a big part of that work.
Yes.
And so I'm just so grateful for it, that this has transformed my life. It has served in such a way. I recognize that even in the shit, even in all the chaos and confusion and all of those kinds of things, that there's gold in there. There's gold in there.
Absolutely.
And for me to acknowledge it all makes it possible for me to find the gold, for me to search for the gold that's in all of that. So that's kind of the intro, right?
Oh, I love it. I love it. And gosh, I've heard you speak in so many different ways, like, taking training with you. And I took a symposium weekend that you put together in September. And, and the thing about it, like you said, even if you were introducing yourself at Harvard Medical School, you introduce yourself the same every time. And I get chills every time you do it.
I love it. I love it. Actually, me too.
And, and it's, gosh, I have so many things I want to tell you. It's like, I get to sit with a teacher that, I got to meet with you in a group setting, but I've never gotten to have a one-on-one conversation with you. And, the first thing I need to say to you is thank you. Like, thank you so much. Like, oh man, it warms me, and right in the center of my chest. I discovered yoga about 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago. And I ended up meeting my sponsor in the studio, right? Like, that's how, so like yoga and recovery have never been separate for me, because I was doing yoga and I was getting into it. And, I was a crazy person, but didn't really know it. But, this crazy shit that comes out of your mouth, and you meet someone in recovery and they listen and they're like, interesting. You might, and this person at the time said to me, you might find yourself in recovery someday. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? And I got semi-offended, like, what do you mean? And then eventually I hit a rock bottom, and I called this person and I said, could I come to that meeting with you? And they were like, yeah, let's pick me up. Let's go, and so I discovered recovery in the yoga studio, and I always could tell that, like, the yoga teachers were saying something that sounded familiar that I was hearing at the meetings, and I just couldn't quite put my finger on it. Like, I wasn't there yet. And then when I discovered there was this thing called Y12SR, Yoga and 12-Step Recovery, and I took your training, what you gave me, Nikki, was the explicit permission that I needed at that time to put them together. And it was like I was just waiting for someone to point it out in the explicit way that you did. And, for anyone who hasn't taken that, do you call it a training? Do you call it a, it's not a yoga teacher training, but it's a training,
right.
And
it's
I know
not a yoga teacher
it's,
training. Of course, we reference a lot because it is.
Absolutely. But even if, whoever you are, if you're curious about how the two things combine, just the way you do it is so, it was just everything I had been waiting for someone to say. and you said it all and put it in a slideshow. And I was like, this is just everything I've been needing. And after that weekend with you, I think I started my meeting within a month. Like, I needed a minute to let it settle in. But I started a meeting very shortly after, and currently still running the only meeting in Portland, Oregon.
Wow.
So that is fascinating. It's changed locations a couple of times. We're currently at the Portland Alano Club, which is amazing because we're right downtown. Like, so many people have access to the Alano Club just because everyone knows, not everyone, but a lot of people know about the Alano Club. I actually had this goal of getting Y12SR out of the yoga studio. That was actually something that I wanted to do.
I love it.
Because, certain types of folks go to yoga studios, and there's nothing against that. But also, those are not the type of people who always walk into the Alano Club.
That's right.
And so it was really my goal to get Y12SR into a different type of space where you wouldn't necessarily find, the same types of folks. And then, this podcast was born because of you. Basically what I thought was like, okay, if we want to know what Y12SR is, we could certainly find a podcast episode, now including this one with an interview with Nikki Myers, because, your voice is out there. But aside from getting to an actual meeting, there just has not been other resources. And so I created this podcast as a deep desire to have a resource that, so basically my episodes, aside from interviews, I pick a topic. I share my experience, strength, and hope on the topic, how it relates to recovery, how that ties into yoga, a yoga practice. And then I offer a gentle 15-minute yoga practice based on the topic.
It's perfect. Oh my God. I love it.
I've been doing that for about maybe 4 or 5 months now. I started this maybe in June because there needed to be something else. I needed something else to exist besides just getting to a meeting. You know, you can listen to recovery podcasts. There are recovery podcasts out there. There are yoga videos and things out there, but I needed something Y12SR that I could start spreading the message.
This is so cool.
So, you know, as of right now, like I just, you know, I think this is probably like episode 24 or something, you know, but ultimately I pick a topic, I share on it, and then I teach a yoga class that helps with embodied understanding.
It's
how do we
awesome.
bring these principles into our body? How do I understand a boundary outside of just my thinking? You know, like what does it feel like to actually interact with your yoga mat as the boundary? Or
it's perfect.
You know, and so I want to thank you because you are a grandmother, a great grandmother of children, but also of ideas. And so this podcast was born out of something that I saw needed in the Y12SR conversation.
Perfect. And I'm so honored. I'm so honored.
I'm honored. I'm so honored. The honor is just so mutual. And so that's why I to thank you and say this podcast exists because of you and your work and how I wanted to take the work forward. I love podcasting. I think I have a great time doing it. So I wanted to share that as a resource, that this podcast was created to capture a mini meeting.
We will share this as a resource.
I hope so.
We absolutely
so thrilled about. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback on it, you know, just people enjoying the opportunity, you know, and this is what I love about Y12SR, Nikki, is I love that it's also for people who haven't discovered recovery yet.
That's right.
And I always say to people, if you're recovery curious, just come to a meeting,
you
know, because there are barriers to 12-step meetings that some people just.
That's right.
And what I love about Y12SR is that it sort of addresses some of that barrier by, you know, even offering a yoga practice, which some people will be like, well, I like yoga. I'll come to that. You know, and so it's so brilliant. And I'm so deeply grateful to you.
Oh, and, thank you. I love that sentence we read in our format. It's for anyone and everyone affected by their own addictive behavior or affected by the addictive behavior of others. And, you know, I always think about this from the perspective of even if addiction as we see it is not directly affecting your life on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Everybody's affected by this. The
Absolutely.
economic cost
we
of
live in an alcoholic society.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah. And then you think about how one of the latest statistics, every 5.5 minutes, someone in the United States dies of an opioid overdose or some kind of overdose, right? So, you know, when we think about this affects everyone at some level. So anyone at all is welcome into the conversation.
And you know, that's something, and I want to go back to what you said in your introduction about integration, because that's something that I've been talking about quite a bit lately, and why Y12SR. You know, I'm part of 12-step programs, you know, what we call those, affinity groups, where it's like, this is what we talk about. You know, Al-Anon is my primary program. So when I go to an Al-Anon meeting, Al-Anon is the only thing I expect to hear. It is the thing I talk about. We only share that literature. And that has a really sacred place in my life.
Right. Exactly.
And I don't get to talk about the fact that I'm also a weed addict there. And I don't get to talk about the fact that I also struggle with all of the other weird shit that I pick up along the way. I mean, I could pick up anything and make it a weird addiction.
Exactly. Hey, I got you. I got you.
You know, and so what I love about Y12SR, and, you know, there's also that other line in the introduction, all A's are welcome. Because
Oh,
when I come to Y12SR, I get to talk about how my weird addict issues also bump up against my weird codependent issues.
yeah.
When I stopped smoking weed, I went to all my friends that I smoked weed with, and I was like, I'm so sorry. I quit smoking weed. And I hope that that doesn't make you mad or affect our relationship, because I know it's something that we did a lot together. And like, I couldn't separate the fact that the addict in me really
Wow.
wanted to
Wow.
and like, those were two parts that just needed to talk, you know?
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And those two parts of me get to talk at Y12SR meetings.
Yeah, we say that A stands for all asses. All asses are welcome in that circle, right? I love it. Kari, you're breaking up a little bit. Your sound is breaking up just a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Probably just the internet. Let me know if that happens again, because I can see you crystal clear.
Okay, perfect.
So we were talking about all asses, and that being integration. For me, what I get out of Y12SR is integration, where I can bring all of my asses to the meeting and talk about how all of that stuff brushes up against each other, because you can't separate yourself.
Right. I will never forget, I was working in a treatment center, and the focus of this treatment center was primarily related to food. Right. And it was, they treated anorexia, bulimia, food addiction, compulsive overeating, that whole 9 yards. And I was listening to someone, and they had an OA meeting on the campus. And I'd never been to a meeting related to food, right? Or that kind of substance related disorder. And I went in there, and there was a woman giving a lead, telling her story. And I'm sitting there listening to her, and I'm going, she's telling my story. She was telling, it was like she and I shared the same life, right? Childhood and life. Hers manifested that way. Mine manifested in drugs and alcohol. And it was then when I got it, right? I'm listening to that, and I'm going, holy shit, right? There's something else underneath this thing. Right? No matter what the form of the manifestation, no matter what the form is. And then, like we talk about in Y12SR, and then I watched me. I played whack-a-mole for years, right?
Yes.
Got drugs and alcohol together, and then sex, right? Worked with that, and then it was money and debtor spending. Right. And I worked with that. I just played whack-a-mole.
And you could go to 15 different meetings. I mean, you could.
Right.
But we also have to live our lives and participate in capitalism so that we can pay our rent and do all the other things,
That's a whole nother subject about that addiction, right? Okay, you're breaking up again.
Shoot, is it just the sound, or is it also my picture?
It's just the sound.
Interesting. I wonder if it's my mic. Is it better now?
It is.
Okay. Does it break up for long when it happens?
No, not for long.
Great. So I want to talk about a couple of concepts that you bring up in Y12SR. One of the other things we say in the intro is that the issues live in our tissues, and we don't mean Kleenex. I always say we don't mean Kleenex, although they do. Sometimes they live in the Kleenex.
Right.
But what do you mean by that? The issues live in our tissues.
It was so funny. Someone gave me, and now when we do little conferences or we do all that stuff, we do get a little plaque of Kleenex or tissues, and we write on it, the issues live in our tissues. That's our little giveaway now.
I love that.
Yeah. All this stuff lives in our body, right? And the truth is, like yoga says, there really is no separation between the mind, the body. Yogis talk about those 5 bodies, right? And they talk about them so that we could, that way, in that model, so that we can get a deeper understanding and relationship with that at that level. But the truth is, they're all the same thing. They're all the same thing. The way we talk about it in Y12SR is the way that it was introduced to me from one of my teachers. It's like using H2O. You got 2 atoms of hydrogen, 1 atom of oxygen, which makes up the molecule H2O. but that one substance has different forms. In the solid form is ice, in the liquid form is water, in the gas form is vapor or steam, right? But it's all still H2O. And it's the same with mind, body, spirit. It's the same with across those 5 bodies, right? It really is all the same thing. And what you do to one affects all the others. So a lot of times we start to think, when we think about the cognitive stuff, right? We think that the solution to the cognitive stuff, lies in cognitive therapies, CBT and all its derivatives and other forms of cognitive therapies. And actually what we do in Y12SR what we do in 12-step programs is a lot of cognitive work. It's a lot of cognitive work. But that stuff lives beyond the cognitive. It really lives in our bodies, right? And more and more and more, especially as we have beginning these conversations about trauma. Trauma lives in the body. It lives in the body. And so doing this set of coupleship, this integration between the cognitive and the somatic, really has been what Y12SR was all about. The way that manifested in my life, I had several relapses. I was clean for 8 years and I relapsed. Then I was clean for another 4 years and I relapsed again, right? And the second relapse, the first relapse was really before a deep integration with yoga. I was introduced to yoga back way long time ago. Right. And then kind of let it go and all of that. Got in 12-step, thank God, right? Because it saved my life. Right. And then the first 8 years, I did all these things. I went back to school, got my job, did MBA, did all the stuff and relapsed at the end of that, right? At that 8 years. And then I found yoga again, and I got knee deep in yoga and philosophy and practice and all of those kinds of things. And then thought that was the it for me. That was the it. And then I relapsed again after 4 years. And it was after that second relapse, that was when Y12SR was really born. That I recognized, at least for someone like me, that there had that they had to be coupled. Yeah. Right. That this was a deep coupleship, right? So using the work on the mat in order to release what's held in the body, and even more importantly, in some ways, the idea of using my work on the mat to create a container, right? A more expanded container, so that I could really do even more of sometimes what as needed, that deep level work, right? Right. And we talk about this a little bit in 12 steps. Sometimes I may need EMDR, right? Or I might need the somatic experiencing work. However, I need a container to hold that. Right. I need something to be able to, so that energy can move, right, as I do this work. Right. And this practice is really what that's all about. And I know for me, and over the course of the years of doing this work, having worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people over the course of doing this years, I see how this is supported to expand the container, to do the work that's necessary to get underneath it all. Absolutely. And you talk about in the training, one of my favorite things that you talk about is wisdom posture. You say, find your wisdom posture. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means? Yeah, that's one of my favorite things too, right? And I love this because it's something that I can use in the moment that I feel a little bit of dysregulation in my nervous system, in the moment I feel any angst or activation or irritation or any of that whole idea of finding the wisdom posture has been so that little tool that's just so useful for me. right? And the idea is to find a place where I can pause, where I can stop. Usually, if you start to really become aware of breath, right? We start to notice when there's we start to move into dysregulation, the breath pattern changes. Right. And something happens with the breath, right? Once I notice that, I can pause, reunite the mind and the breath. Because when the mind and the breath are reunited, I'm present. When I'm activated or any of those kinds of things in any way, usually what I've done is time travel. I'm either in the past or I'm in the future. I'm not present. And healing can only happen in the present moment. Healing can't happen in the past, nor can it happen in the future, right? Healing can only happen in the present moment. So taking that pause in my wisdom posture to come back to the present moment and just reuniting mind and breath, just simply reuniting mind and breath brings me into the present moment. And once I'm in the present moment, I got choice. I don't have choice when I'm in the past or the future. I only have choice when I'm in the present moment. So it opens up the possibility of accessing the wisdom to know the difference. We talk about the wisdom to know the difference so much in 12 steps. But what we talk about here and we assert is I got to create this environment so I even can gain access to the wisdom. So I even got access to it. And that can only happen when I'm in the present moment.
One of the things I talk about when I teach a lot is, part of why we're practicing is to normalize choice. Like to make it a normal thing. Like we're moving from pose to pose and we're making choices for ourselves.
I love it.
Because a lot of times choices, I feel like when you're making choices, there could be a lot of kicking and screaming and bitching and, like, well, which choice is the right choice? But, when we come to our yoga mat, it's like the opportunity to learn how to make choices without so much fuss. Like you just make the choice.
Breathe, come into the present moment. And that's where, we talk about this in one of the 12-step programs that have been so useful for me. That's when more can be revealed. That's when more can be revealed. When I come back to it from this place of much more of an equanimity, when I'm not in the past, I'm not in the future, I'm here. Then there's a possibility for more to be revealed. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I do too. I'm so grateful.
Can you speak to the impact that Y12SR has had on the recovery community and how it's contributed to the larger conversation around addiction and recovery?
I love that. What a great question. You're a great interviewer.
Oh, thank you.
I love this. Yeah, I love it. That's a great question. Because that's one of the goals of Y12SR, right? One of the goals is to broaden this definition of addiction. So often when you talk about addiction, immediately the mind goes to substance or behavior, right? And I assert that it's even bigger than substance and behavior. I say that from the perspective of the Yoga Sutras, right? And I would assert that what Patanjali is referencing when the teachings around avidya come up, right? This whole idea. Avidya, sometimes defined as ignorance, but not ignorance like we sometimes think of it. It's this ignorance of, not recognizing that I don't even know what I don't know.
You don't even know what you don't even know.
You don't even know what you do. And I don't know, I can see that pop up in so many situations in my day-to-day life, right? I was just having a conversation with someone and something about, or a couple of days ago, and something about that conversation irritated me, right? And it's not that I don't acknowledge and feel that. You feel the feelings like we talk about in program. However, what I came to realize Well, there were a whole set of things that were going on that I didn't even know. Right?
Like with you or the situation or
with
all
the
of it?
situation as a whole, with the situation and with me, right? And here's the piece of with me. If I hear that when I'm, for example, hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, right? It looks completely different, right? When I go take a nap, wake up, I can see the whole thing from a completely
I can't even tell you how sometimes I'm like on the edge of, it's like I can't live anymore. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why why am I even on this planet? What is my purpose, my function here? And I take a nap.
And you wake up and it's all different.
75 minutes later, I'm like, I'm fine. It could be so extreme. And it's, it's really nuts what could happen when even, we're actually very like sensitive creatures who are really susceptible to our environments and to our chemistry, and, what's happening in here could really be so extreme.
We are interdependent beings. We're interdependent beings, right? We don't have to be codependent, nor can we be anti-dependent. Those are two things on the opposite side.
Two extremes, right?
We are interdependent beings. Our homeostasis depends on the interdependency, really, of all things.
Right.
Right. So that whole thing that Patanjali speaks about with avidya is a really big thing. It's false understanding, it's misinterpretation, right? It's all of those things. And when I think about what at a deep level and feel into what that really is, it's much like what Dr. Bill W. calls stinking thinking, right? That is really stinking thinking. And the truth foremost, right? I don't want to make a big generalization, but we're pretty much all addicted to the way we process our reality.
Yeah.
We pretty much
absolutely
are, right? And once we recognize that, once we tell just like in step one, once we tell the truth about that, there's again this possibility to access what's beyond it, right? What it means, just like it opened up and empowered me. The moment I said, looking at all the evidence around me, holy shit, and told the truth, I'm an addict, right? And then there was an empowerment within that opened up the possibility for healing. We say it all the time in Y12SR. You can't heal what you don't acknowledge.
Right.
You can't heal what you don't acknowledge. Right. So telling the truth about, I see things through a particular lens. Right. And that's part of the deal. We're subjective beings.
I remember you telling us you have an analogy about if you're trying to get to San Francisco, but you're in Chicago and the ticket agent says, "Where are you?" and you lie and say Ohio, you're never getting to San Francisco.
You're never going to get to San Francisco.
I was like, okay, we have to acknowledge where we are and tell the truth about where we are, because we will never get to San Francisco if we telling the ticket agent that we're in Ohio.
That's right.
And like, that's just like, when we sometimes take the personal out of it, it makes more sense. Like, like I just have to say what's real.
That's right.
Say what's true.
And then there's possibility.
And then there's possibility.
Then there's empowerment that's possible, right? I'm open for possibility at that point.
So what would you say to somebody who is new in recovery or recovery curious? Because I always like to say recovery curious and not sober curious, because I really don't think that all recovery has anything to do with sobriety, at least at first. I was in recovery for years before I got sober. There are just other things to be in recovery for, and sobriety wasn't even on my radar at the time. So sometimes those things come over time. But what would you say to somebody who was recovery curious or who was new to recovery? What would you tell them? What would you say to them?
I love this. I got from one of my teachers, right? And when my teacher Gary said this, it just hit me in such a deep way. And it's so funny because he's not really a 12-stepper or any, I mean, he's coming from his, oh my God, all his study over God knows how many years with deep, deep study in this yogic work and all the things that he does in this yogic work. But he was talking about, and he was delivering a teaching. And this is what I tell everyone, and it has to do with that bigger conversation we were just having, this bigger picture of addiction, and that whole idea that in some ways we're all working through this lens. We're all addicted to the way we process our reality. And what he said was, examining our conditioning is our ticket to freedom. Examining our conditioning is our ticket. Examining our lens and examining our condition. And that's what stepping into recovery actually allows us to do. It actually allows us a container, right? This place where we can begin to examine all the things that are the condition. When we come into this plane of existence, when we're born, right? We're born completely right-brained. Right. I'm watching.
I've been reading Jill Bolte Taylor's book.
That's it. That's it. That's
been reading that new book, and it is a mind blower. I will say.
I love Jill.
Jill's I do too. And I mean,
one of my dearest friends.
I know. And I love that you've been bringing her into this recovery work. I don't know if, if it's via you, but I know that I've been seeing her more around you.
I love her. Love her.
It's just incredible.
So it's that idea, right? That our left brain doesn't even come online really fully till we're 7 years old. It doesn't even start till we're 7 months old. And then we start all this programming. You get told you're a girl, girls do this, or you're a boy, boys do that. Or you get told, oh, you're little, little means this. Or, you're black, black fits here. You're white. Right fits here. You're this. We get, that's programming. That's conditioning. Right? Right. And so part of the idea is examining that conditioning. Right. Who am I? Who could I be beyond that programming? Right. What's the possibility? I've been shaped by that. Right. I've been shaped by all of that. Right. And what's the possibility around beyond all of that? And it's such a beautiful inquiry. So for anyone new who just is interested in this depth of work of, who am I for real, right? I love that if that's even a question for you, if that's even a thought or a question for you, right? Then this is structured work, structured support in chipping away. And I love that thought. We say this at the end of the training, right? The job is subtraction. We're already whole and complete, right? And we're just chipping away at all this programming and all this stuff that's been that sits on top of our wholeness. Right. And the 12 steps are a freaking brilliant way they're brilliant.
I agree with you on that.
Brilliant.
I know it doesn't resonate for everyone, but it works for a lot of people.
What I find doesn't resonate for everyone is some of the implementations of it. Well, I tell this to people all the time. I have been to some very dangerous 12-step meetings, right? I've been to some what occurred for me is unsafe and dangerous 12-step meetings, right? And I've been to some of the most healing and incredible and wonderful groups that you can imagine, right? Right. So, but that's the same with churches, or it's the same
yoga
with
studios,
with schools, yoga studios. It's the same. It's the same, right? That doesn't undermine just because I got a bad and off experience at a yoga school. I don't want to throw out yoga because I got this bad experience at a yoga school. And it's the same with 12 steps, right? Those 12 steps, I would assert, really are brilliant. And there's something there in order to do this work. So that's what I encourage people to
love that. I love that. Can you say that one more time about the conditioning? You said examine your
Examining, that's my teacher. Examining our conditioning is our ticket to freedom.
Examining
our conditioning is
our ticket to freedom.
Right? Right.
So Nikki, what is up and coming in Y12SR? I know I follow you on Instagram, so I know that people can definitely follow you on Instagram if they're curious about taking a training or doing, and I know that you run a meeting still every Monday, right?
I do. I run a meeting online Monday night and a meeting in person on Wednesday night, but I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana. And right now we're not doing that in a hybrid form.
Our meeting is hybrid, which is, it does take that extra step, but we've been doing hybrid and it's good. You know, we have a computer and we do a webcam, and we had a woman show up to our meeting the other day from Indiana, and we're in Portland. So it was 10 o'clock at night for her, but it's nice to be able to have people drop in from I'm
just getting, you know, years ago in my life, I was really, I would say tech savvy.
Yeah.
And that kind of went away. I'm not so much anymore, but I did my first hybrid training this past weekend.
Amazing.
And I mean, there were a few glitches as I tried to figure out my way through it, but overall it went really well.
That's wonderful. So you're doing one in person, one fully virtual. I'm always referring people, you know, the Y12SR website is a good resource. A lot of people find me from that website. That's how people find about meetings, but there are teachers listed on there, and that meeting is listed under the meetings on the website. And then do you have some trainings coming up? What are some other things the organization has coming up?
We do. We got coming up. It's one this weekend, so it's a little short notice, but it's called Breaking Barriers, Transforming the Samskara of Codependency. And it's one of my favorite things to do. I always talk about, we're speaking about this, we were talking about this before we record, that whole idea of the disease of the lost self. The disease of the lost self. So
tell us about that briefly. What does that mean?
We start to go into it. Ultimately, anytime I look outside of myself for something that can only come from the inside, truth is I can form an addictive relationship with whatever that is.
Yes.
Right. I've been in an addictive relationship, I always say, with Nordstrom's. Right?
Mine are spices. I could be like, I am not going to be complete until I have every spice that I need on my spice rack. I mean, I could turn anything into a weird relationship.
Funny. Spices. Oh my God. Right.
You know, but like I don't know if you know about Penzies. They're a spice company.
Penzies. Yeah.
And I got on their newsletter, and every week they're sending out these sales. And so $1 here, $2 there. Oh, spend $10, get an extra. And before I knew it, I had a full blown obsession.
Oh man. I did a trip though. That's it. I'm looking outside of myself for something that can only come from the inside.
Yes.
Right. And the online thing is really a trip, right? I was talking about Amazon. You get 4 hits with Amazon, right? You get a hit when you see it. Oh my God, there's a hit, right?
Yep.
You get a hit when you hit send, right? You know it's coming. You get a hit when it gets to your door, and then you get a hit when you open the package.
You are so right on with that. Like, yep, I get all those hits. Or especially when I forgot that I ordered it, and I'm like,
oh,
what is it?
And here's the deal with that. Nothing wrong with Amazon, right? Nothing wrong with spices.
Right.
Nothing wrong with it.
Just a tool.
It's me in relationship with those things.
Right.
And so that's this whole idea, looking at, anything I go to outside of myself, that really what I'm looking for is something from the inside. Right. That really is a lot of times we say codependent, we think of it in relationship to another person.
Right.
And that's true. But the invitation is to look a little more deeply. Anytime I look outside of myself.
And so this workshop, we'll talk more about that.
It talks a ton about that.
Do you offer this workshop regularly? Is this something that if
we offer that one at least 3 or 4 times a year.
Excellent.
Yeah, we
and then there's the Y12SR training if people want to become space holders.
Right. Right. And there are a couple ways to do that training, but all that's on
Excellent. So the Y12SR website is a
website.
great place to find Nikki. Your Instagram is a great place. I know you post a lot of things on there.
I
Up
don't,
and coming.
but
Well, somebody
else.
does. They make you look pretty good. And behind the mastermind is a great social media manager.
Yes.
And then the meetings. I often tell people, like, if you want to get to know Nikki Myers, check out the meeting.
Yeah.
Go right to the source. So
the Monday night meeting is great.
Right? It is. I went to that meeting many times.
I love it.
It's a lovely meeting. And even when you don't make it, you always have a really lovely person.
Yes.
Who facilitates. So it's a really lovely way just to get to know you at kind of low key, just to check out recovery with you.
I love it.
I am just so deeply grateful for this opportunity to talk to you, Nikki. It has been a dream come true just to sit with you and share ideas with you and to share this podcast. This podcast is really near and dear to my heart. I call it Luminous Recovery Yoga. Luminosity is in the Yoga Sutras, but it's also something that I have received from being in recovery and finding yoga, which is that, like, the fog lifts and
that's right.
And the light can shine through. And so I'd love it if you share this podcast as a resource for other students.
Believe that.
I would love that. And we could grow this as another resource, just another way to get the Y12SR out there, even when people can't get to meetings or they can't, for whatever reason.
It's a beautiful thing that you're doing with this.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
I'm so grateful to you, and I'm so grateful that you made the time for this conversation. And I hope that anybody who's interested in Y12SR finds it. I want more people. I know plenty of people who have taken the training with you. And I also, if anybody out there is listening to this who has taken the training and they have not yet dipped their toe into the space holder opportunity, it really is a blessing to offer that space for others. And I have a co-chair, and it's incredible because Nikki says, get yourself a co-chair. Don't do it alone.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's wonderful.
Anytime as you're doing this podcast work, if you invite me, I'm here.
Thank you. Maybe I could have you actually run an experience where you can share your experience, strength, and hope on a topic, and then teach us a short practice.
I would love that. So we'll set that up. Really
fun. Let's set that up. All right. Thank you, Nikki. For those who will be watching this, there will be show notes and a description where you could find more links and resources to get directly to Nikki, and follow Nikki on Instagram, and just let's blow this up. Let's get Y12SR out there.
Yay!
All right. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Luminous Recovery Yoga podcast. If you'd like to support the show, please consider joining my Patreon or leaving a comment and review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or YouTube.